So there we go. So shall we start by doing the first? Shall I put the PowerPoints up?
Go ahead. Go for the PowerPoint, and then we'll kick in with the beginning of chapter 4.
Yeah.
I would just like to interrupt and say what an honor, Michael, that you come to our book club. Thank you. Thank you, Yinka, as well.
Delighted to be here.
So we're going to go through the 3 chapters today, and just so you've got an idea of the book as well, and have a practice. So this is a reminder of the previous chapters. So Richard's dilemma was a broken relationship and marriage. Richard's emotions were frustration, anger, and fear. He was looking at what causes your pain. It was looking at how do you create changes you do want, and choosing to take responsibility for your feelings and what goes on inside of you to change the patterns in your life and heal. So that was the first 3 chapters, looking at Richard's life of his broken marriage and relationships. And today, chapter 4 is about feeling your guidance systems. No one can simultaneously take responsibility for his or her life while blaming someone else. The purpose of life, when we refuse to listen to pain, our warning signals, is to kick us in the limitations. The more we resist listening, the harder life kicks us. I certainly know that one. So through this, we will have activities as well for you to have a go at practicing this stuff, writing out some stuff. So no one can make you feel angry, sad, afraid, or anything else. Oh, what was that?
Okay. Somebody liked that thought.
Okay. So no one can make you feel angry, sad, afraid, anything else. Others, however, can certainly trigger the cause of the feelings you hold. Who and what are your triggers? So just jot down for a few who and or what are your triggers. And remember, after you've written it, to breathe.
And recognizing that breath is a way to shut down the flow of awareness in your body. So we're going to offer that reminder to breathe quite often. And if you look at those first 3 chapters, what you'll see is that Richard was looking through a certain belief system, and his belief system was blame. Everything was about what's going on in his mind is somebody else's fault. And so what we're going to do is we're going to try to convert him from a blame-based mind to a love-based mind. That's the essence of the work of what we're looking to do. We're looking to convert every person on the planet. If you're in any form of hostility or fear, and conversion is often thought about something to do with the church, nothing to do with the church. It's to convert your mind back to its original fuel supply. And the original fuel supply is love. If you hold a newborn child and you tap into the essence of that newborn, you're going to know exactly what human life is. And so what we're looking to do is to restore the movement and the flow of human life in our human forms. And the best definition that I've found to date for life is that human life, is love flowing through a cell. Anything that we do to restrict that, we inhibit and we shorten and cut down the aliveness in our lives. And we're looking to shift that and to give people the tools to return to the truth of who we are. So this chapter talks about how feelings are not something caused by someone else, but they're actually a guidance system for us. And we want to become the explorer here. You know, one of the things we talk a lot about in this work is becoming the thinker apart from the thought. Excuse my froggy throat. The thinker apart from the thought, the feeler apart from the feelings, the actor apart from the actions. So we're going to invite you to look back and observing from a place where you're committed to honoring the truth, not the stories your mind has told you, not the blame game, but really being able to look at the truth of what's going on in your mind and in your world, both internally and externally, and then to develop the understanding of the difference between those two. because a lot of people have never distinguished. They think that because something's happening in their mind, it must be happening in the world. And when we have feelings that are based in something other than love, what those feelings are telling us, what they're guiding us into is, you're in your own reality structure. You're in your own world, buddy. Now you think it's caused by somebody else. You think it's what's going on out there, but it's not. It's what's going on in here. And so we're looking to develop the understanding of the difference between the internal and the external, and to recognize that what's happening inside of you is happening inside of you. So people have things happening inside them and they're going, yeah, Charlie did them, Bill and Harry, and it's all everybody else's fault. What's happening inside of you, you're experiencing because it's inside of you. If you don't like it, I don't care if you can blame 7.5 billion people on the planet, but it's not going to change what's happening inside of you until you're able to step back, go inside of yourself and distinguish what's there. And if it's something that you don't like, then remove it. So we want to look, we're looking toward replacing blame with responsibility. And when you do that, when you shift that mindset, it's kind of like a computer. There's certain inputs to a computer. I mean, we know that if the inputs are lousy, if the internet signal's poor, Grady was just telling us his internet's been down. Notice his computer was dysfunctional. Nothing wrong with his computer, but the inputs were incorrect. So if your modem's weak or not functioning properly, if your internet signal isn't working properly, notice that every function of the instrument is distorted. In exactly the same way, we're going to be looking through this work at the inputs of the mind, taking responsibility for them and changing those things so that the instrument called a body-mind unit operates properly, and removing the clouds from it. I'll turn it back to you, Yinka.
Thank you. Just jotting down a few notes then. So the conversation between Michael and Richard. Richard, freeing yourself from the belief that any person, place, thing, event, or circumstances causes you to feel requires a new look at reality and an undoing of the clouds of the past. When you are angry, you have caused your own anger. When there is fear, the fear is of your own making. That's ridiculous. Why would I make myself angry? How would I make myself angry? My feelings are a result of what happens to my life, Richard protests. Would you be willing to do an experiment that is designed to give you a direct experience of what causes your feelings? So that question also goes to you. Would you be willing to do an experiment that is designed to give you a direct experience of what causes your feelings?
And if you are, then what I'm going to ask you to do is kind of sit back in your chair and get relaxed for a moment. And I'm going to invite you to go through a series of feelings. So I'm going to ask you to, first of all, allow yourself to feel sadness. And notice where in your physiology you feel that sensation. See if you can locate it somewhere. And if you can, put your hand there. Now allow yourself to take a deep breath and focus on and connect to the best model you have for connecting to love. Tap into love for a moment. In our breakout room, Grady was showing us his newborn granddaughter. Just opens the space. So just tap into that and take a breath and breathe into that place where you were experiencing that fear, and just let it soften and let it go. And then I'm going to invite you to allow yourself to go to the feeling of anger. And once again, notice where in your physiology you're feeling that anger. Place your hand on that part of your structure. And then once again, allow yourself to take a breath, let everything soften. Allow yourself to bring in the experience of love and take that love energy to the place where you're experiencing the anger. And just let it soften and let it go. Just let everything in your structure soften. Let it shake out and let it relax. And then I'm going to invite you to allow yourself to feel sadness. Notice where in your physiology you feel that sadness. Place your hand wherever you're feeling the sadness. And once again, tap into the presence of love. And take that love to the place in your physiology where the sadness was. Take a deep breath in and just let it go. And then allow yourself to go into a total connected space of love. Perhaps, and this is an exercise I found a lot of people find useful in tapping to that presence of love, go back to the moment where you first held a newborn. If you don't have that experience, let me offer mine to you. Let me share mine, the experience I go to. When my two children were born, we birthed them at home. I got to catch them. My daughter in particular, when she was born, her head delivered into my hands. And while they say a baby can't focus their eyes for the first several days, my daughter laser focused into my eyes and grinned. And that energy sent me into a place that I had never been before, at least that I had any recall of being, that was just totally saturated with the direct experience of pure joy and love. To the point where I couldn't even think a thought. So if you don't have a newborn experience, let yourself go with that one. And imagine yourself going there. And then allow yourself to just come back to this moment. And as you observe your mind in operation, what did you do in order to feel fear? And that's rhetorical. Just identify for yourself. What did you feel, or what did you have to do in order to feel anger? What did you do to shift to sadness? And what did you do to go to love? And as you tap into that, without opening all the microphones and getting everybody's feedback, I'll just offer that from having done that experiment with thousands of people, what each person did in order to go to one feeling or another is they had a thought. And that thought resulted in a sensation in their structures. Now, I'd offer that feelings are shadows of thoughts. And notice that in order to change from one feeling to another, you had to shift thoughts. Now, again, observing your mind, stepping back and observing in operation, whose thought caused your anger, your sadness, your fear? Or whose thought led you to experiencing the presence of love? And you'll notice that there's only one person in there thinking those thoughts, and that was you. Now, if yesterday, last week, last month, last year, 10 years ago, you had some form of emotion that you didn't like, whose thought had to move in you for you to experience that emotion? It's pretty unescapable. It had to be yours. If tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, 10 years from now, you experience some untoward sensation in your structure, some emotion you don't like, whose thought's going to be behind it? Obviously, it's going to be yours. So that results in a question. How many expect to experience some form of pain or disturbed feeling at some point in the future? And I'll just offer that, having worked with hundreds of groups around the world previously, most everybody in the room puts their hand up. And I say to you, why would you do that to yourself? You say you don't like that, but you keep going back to it. Why is that? And often the reason is because you have not yet been trained to take charge of your own thoughts. You have not taken charge of your own mind. And the patterns that were modeled for you in your life, in your early childhood, and that you inherited through your genes are running your life. And my offering is that you're not designed to be run like that. Feelings are nothing but shadows of thoughts. Feelings are nothing but a warning signal. Now, most people, when they have untoward feelings, go, yeah, and then it was their fault. Well, feelings are kind of like an alarm system. If the fire alarm goes off, how many people would cancel the thought, but if the fire alarm went off in your home, how many people would call the fire department and send them to a neighbor's house? Well, that would be silly. But notice how many people, it's almost universal in our cultures, experience traumatic emotions and are standing around railing at somebody else because of what's moving inside of them. If that's true for you, then you have a significant piece of work to do. Feelings are designed to inform us of the quality of our thoughts. And it's not the events in life. You say, oh, when that happened,
Is
that
this
really
the
happened.
beautiful group?
Can we mute those voices?
Yeah, I'm just going to take them off now. It's
like we've got some party crashers.
Yeah. I'm just going to check who it is first. There we go. You should be able to unmute now. You'll have to unmute yourself, Michael. Oh, sorry, I've just unmuted.
All right. So where the world teaches us is the events in our lives that cause our emotions. The offering of this work is that it's not the events in your lives, but the thoughts that are triggered into activity by the events in your life that are the problems. So, event, unconscious thought, feeling, blame, event. And people skip over that interim step of what's going on inside themselves. If you talk to a modern day psychologist, most of them will tell you that somewhere between 90, maybe 95, as much as 98% of our thoughts are unconscious. And people willfully avoid looking into and dealing with their own unconscious thoughts. And then they wonder why life becomes a mess. And then if you get connected with somebody else who's playing the same game, you just double the insanity and things get crazier by the day. What we're going to introduce is a solution to that. And the solution is forgiveness. Now, recognize here that we're going to utilize forgiveness as a way to go inside of ourselves, make contact with unconscious dynamics, and remove the ones that don't work in a human life. Now, we have a Greek concept in the Western world of forgiveness that leaves that interim step out. The Greek idea of forgiveness is there's an event, it's the cause of my pain, so I'm going to forgive the event or the person involved in the event. So I'm going to let them off the hook for what's moving inside of me. If I let somebody else off the hook because pain is moving inside of me, have I done anything to change the pain that's moving inside of me? Absolutely not. And if I don't ever do anything to change the pain that's inside of me, then I get to live the title of this book. Why is this happening to me again? We're looking to offer people a tool with which to step into that interim space, the one that most people decide to remain unconscious of, because that's what's happened for many generations in their bloodlines. So forgiveness, in truth, the original first century Aramaic forgiveness process is the opportunity to touch into the hidden parts of the mind and heal insane thoughts. Now, what's an insane thought? An insane thought is anything that's out of harmony with love. It does not belong within this human system. And one of the things to understand is that thoughts, the mind has this ability to convert a thought into a picture. Now, we've been taught that we have a set of eyes, and we look out through our eyes and we see the world. Nothing could be further from the truth. I know that 99.9% of the people in the world believe that, and it's a lie. You've never seen anything with your eyes. You are never going to see anything with your eyes. You don't see with your eyes. You see with your brain. And your brain makes up the world you see according to the thoughts that are triggered in you by the actual world that you live in. So the eye is an instrument that receives energy. It's a receiver of light. It's literally an antenna. You can't see out through the antenna. The antenna brings light energy in. According to the information brought in through the senses, thoughts in the mind are resonated into activity. When thoughts are resonated into activity in the mind converts those thoughts to the world that you see, literally to the pictures you see. Perception is a construct of the mind based on what happens in the actuality of the world and what that actuality triggers in us, and what is triggered in us is what generates the world that we think we see out there. But what we're seeing are constructs in our minds. And if the constructs in your mind are filled with pain and trauma, then you tend to be a resonating energy field for pain and trauma to keep coming to you, to keep coming to you. When you take responsibility for the pain and trauma that's in you, and you begin to learn to throw it out, to remove it, again, to forgive it, then everything changes. And feelings are given to you to put you on notice as to what's going on inside of you. So it takes time. This is a different way of thinking than most people have ever even conceived of as to the way the world works and the mind works. So it takes time to learn to integrate these tools. That old saying, you can't do new math with an old math mind. As we said earlier in the session, you can't simultaneously take responsibility for something and blame someone for it. You can't do it. It's an oxymoron. It will do nothing but leave you in conflict. And as you're moving out of the old BS belief systems into the truth of the way the mind and the world works, there are going to be stages of deep confusion. That's a step in the process of healing. When you're bringing truth in through the senses, and there is untruth moving inside, when those two things meet, they mix and they create confusion. Imagine I have a whiteboard and I have three bright, powerful lights, a red one, a blue one, and a green one. And I shine those three lights on the board. Now, we know scientifically there's no such thing as color. Color is an hallucination of the mind. That's why some people are colorblind. Their minds generate colors differently than other people. They have trouble with stoplights because they don't see red as red like the average person does. And red is just a frequency. It's a signature frequency that most people's minds read as red. So if I shine those three lights on the board, you've got clarity. Each frequency, the red, the blue, and the green, comes through clearly, and you see those spots on the board. But what happens if I mix all three of them together? I mix red, blue, and green. Literally the frequencies of those different colors mix with each other. They add to and subtract from each other in terms of frequency, and you get some muddied mess. That muddied mess is called confusion. Thoughts work exactly the same way. Thoughts are frequencies, just like light energy is. And so when you're bringing truth in and the old frauds of the mind come up, when they mix, it creates confusion. Just be aware that that will happen. It is a step in the process, and it's a safe step to go through. And what we want to do is wake up to the point where we can respond to what happens rather than react. You look at that word react. How did you play out an act you did on a previous occasion? So we're looking to consciously respond to something rather than just play out the past. And, you know, it's like we live in this sea of life that wants to support life in us. It's like life abhors death. And whenever we hold an energy that's unlike life in us, we're in a process of creating literally our own deaths. I would offer all death is suicide. And so the purpose of life at this stage of our development, I'm not saying this is the ultimate purpose, but at this stage, the purpose of life is to kick us right square in the limitation. Life is going to resonate, is going to hone in on the lowest energy that you hold and draw somebody to you to play it out. And if it's based in pain and you have the tools and you're willing to be responsible, then that becomes your opportunity to forgive, to remove the content, the frequencies in your structure that are of a destructive nature. And so when those things happen, you start saying thank you to life rather than wanting to beat up on it and blame it. So that pretty much completes the picture of it. And by the way, if you don't have it yet, in the email, I believe that Yinka sent out, there is a link. You can go to our website and you can buy the book, or pardon me, no, you can download the book free in any one of, I think, 8 or 9 different languages. The book is out of print, so I can't sell you one, but you can go to eBay or Amazon, and they usually have used copies available fairly inexpensively. But you can also just go to that link and download it from
I'll put the link in the chat as well.
Perfect. Awesome. Cool. So that kind of completes the picture of chapter 5. You have more to share on that, Nick?
I'll just click it on the screen just to...
By the way, Yinka, I like this format of doing it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Your PowerPoints are awesome.
I like what you said about the feelings and shadows of our thoughts. That really got me, that one. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Just noticing that to have a feeling, we have to think a thought. You know, when I'm getting angry, I have to remember something that previously that's happened to get angry.
And a lot of our thoughts are locked in a thing that in our Laws of Living course we call the automatic decision system. No, it's something that operates strictly by the law of resonance. An event happens and something moves in us. If I say, you know, let's present an event, don't think about the color of your car. What happens? Something about the color of your car moves in you. I set up a frequency with my voice. Your ear picks up that frequency. You know, I don't know where you are. You're maybe 3,000 miles from me. I put forward a frequency, it hit a little ceramic microphone that moved the microphone, converted to an electrical frequency, put it out through the internet, 3,000 miles away, your computer received it. There's a little plastic cone in a speaker, and that frequency is converted back to motion. The speaker moves, and you think you hear my voice. Now, you don't hear a word I say. I don't even say words, as a matter of fact. All I do is move a little flap of skin in my throat, and people call those things words, and we assign meanings to them. And many meanings are false. And so to recognize that resonance is the key. If something happens in our world, it's going to resonate something in us. And what we hear with our brain. We don't hear with our ears any more than we see with our eyes. And once you recognize that, then you start seeing that the output of your mind, you start understanding the output of your mind always tells you more about the content of your mind than the world you think you're looking at or hearing. It's always telling you about content within yourself. And if you don't like it, there's work to be done. That's all.
I'll just flick through the
Sure.
part, and then it'll take it to the next chapter, just for those. So it was, what was one of the scenes you thought to feel angry? I think the same thoughts that brought up anger for you at the same time. Hold the thought, I'm ready to do my whole life differently. What an opportunity to heal.
Yeah. By the way, that picture that you just showed of that little character from Inside Out, if you haven't seen the Inside Out movie, get it. It's one of the most profound events in history because it puts the understanding of how we work as humans into a format that a 4-year-old child can understand and start to relate to. It's absolutely awesome. Take it and put it to work.
Yeah.
By the way, if you haven't seen, and we just, because we were going to see another film, somebody recommended we go and see Spider-Man No Way Home, the big Spider-Man movie last year. Go and see it. It's another profound public event. And if you haven't seen it, I'll give you a little spoiler in it. You know, over the years have been 3 different young men who've played Spider-Man. And each of them, you know, lost somebody, and the ultra villain that they were fighting was the cause. And so they come to this new Spider-Man film with hate for these people and the desire to destroy them. And fortunately, Spider-Man's aunt is the saint here. She reminds them that's not who they are. And you see these 3 different personalities. You know, most people live in their trauma world, live out of multiple personalities. Well, you see these 3 personalities show up, and each of them wants, you know, is just in such rage at their loss. They think their rage is about their loss. But Aunt reminds them, no, it's about you. And reminds them that who they are is to bring healing. And so the rest, I mean, I just think this is so monumental that Disney has put this out to millions of children around the world. And you see these 3 Spider-Man personalities that each support the other in healing their archenemy rather than killing them. It's a whole new message in the world. It's one we've been delivering for decades. And to me, the fact that Disney's putting this out on a global scale, it was one of their biggest grossing movies last year. It's like we're getting close to critical mass when a filmmaker like Disney puts the hero out. And the hero is, rather than about the good guy killing the bad guy to become the hero, the good guy brings healing to the bad guy and becomes the hero. It's like a whole new message for the world, and it's time.
I would recommend the movie as well. I only watched it because I heard Michael talk about it in one of his sessions, and I went and watched it. And I don't watch Spider-Man, but it was really good. And yeah, definitely recommend.
Pretty amazing message.
Yeah. I'll click through these. So notice the person, situation, circumstances is not here to know what you are thinking, but each thought has an impact on you. Your thoughts impact you first. Your feelings inform you of the nature of the impact of the energy of your thoughts on your psychology. If you are in pain, your thinking is in error. Feelings are your feedback mechanism. Yeah, thank you. And tell you whether you are engaging in constructive or destructive mind energy. Once you recognize your feelings are generated by your internal mechanism, you have the key to power over those feelings, and you can take responsibility for them. Removing realities from the mind is the original meaning of the word forgiveness. When pain surfaces, if you are honest and in touch with yourself, you will own the upset and seize the opportunity to release that internal reality to forgive. Then we're going to go into chapter 5, which is the purpose of pain. What you hide from yourself is your dis-ease. Think of the body being an energy field instead of a physical matter.
So let's bring Einstein in here. You know, Einstein is really one of the foundations of this work. And here's what Einstein says, quote, "On such things as matter, we have been all wrong. What we have heretofore called matter is energy, energy whose vibrations have been so low as to be perceptible to the senses. There is no matter." Einstein says we do not live in a material world. We live in an energetic world. And when you realize that your form is an energy system, not a physical thing, but an energetic thing, and that relative to your energy systems, there are two qualities of energy, that which builds it up and that which tears it down. Tear down energy is the stuff with which we destroy ourselves. When we engage in those energetic patterns, it is self-destruction. And pain is there to get us to see what we're doing to ourselves. Pain is a signal that makes our ears grow. And so if I recognize that I'm engaging in some sort of a disintegrative energy, and I can hide it from myself and keep blaming and keep in my rage or what have you about somebody else, pain is going to keep gnawing away until it gets our attention. And we start to recognize, oh, this pain is internal. It's something that's happening inside of me. Maybe I better pay attention to it. And, you know, two categories of energy, that which builds the system up, integrative, and disintegrative, that which tears the system down. And so, you know, when that pain alarm goes off, do you cut the wires to the bell if your fire alarm goes off? No, I mean, gee, the signal's gone. Everything must be okay, right? But you know the fire still rages somewhere. Most people pop a pill. You know, you'd think that, say, for instance, a person who has a headache has a body that lacks aspirin. But you know what? If you have a headache, your body does not lack aspirin. An aspirin, you know what the root of the word pharmacy is? It's sorcery. Aspirin simply covers up the cause of the disintegrative energy that's happening in the tissue called the brain when you have a headache. So that allows the degeneration that's happening, that the pain is warning us about, to continue, and we can pretend everything's okay. Be very careful in your use of drugs, because every drug is a disease disguised as a cure. If you don't believe me, get any drug on the market, I don't care what it is, look inside the package and there's a little insert. Now, they won't call them diseases, they'll tell you these are the side effects. Excuse me, there are no side effects to drugs. Drugs cause diseases. Be aware of that. Nobody was ever healed by a drug. Now, that doesn't mean don't ever use a drug. There's no question. In the right hands, in crisis management, if somebody's on the edge of death, a drug can pull them back from the edge of death and save their lives, but it can't heal them. Ultimately, you have to become responsible for your own energy field, become aware of the qualities of energy that you're holding. And if you really want to heal, you've got to remove the interfering energy. So the idea of this work is to heal, not to just sweep symptoms away. Now, sweeping symptoms away, for many people, say, well, you know, that other way sounds really hard. No, actually, sweeping symptoms away is the hard way to live, because once you sweep one set of symptoms away, you've brought toxic substances into your structure that are going to create more disease processes, which means you're going to need more drugs to handle those symptoms. And then you're going to need, and the process is degeneration. That's a really tough way to live, but it's relatively effortless. Step in and do your work. You know, it's easy, and you can kick in the automatic decision system and do all the raging and blaming and how it's all everybody else's fault. And I'm right and you're wrong and you're the problem and I'm just fine. You can play all those games with yourself, but in the end, it's your own degeneration that you're engaging in. Once you take responsibility, then you have to start to move those energetic patterns out. And that's not necessarily an easy process, but in the long run, while it takes effort to do that, it's the easy way to live. because you don't have to look forward to growing old and decrepit because you've been carrying these toxic energies around all your life. At 80 and 90 and 100, you can be vital and alive and rocking. So we're looking to introduce all factors possible to strengthen each person in their full function. When you're fully vital, you can't hide anything from yourself. That's why people head for things that devitalize them, that weaken them. Now, they wouldn't say, oh yeah, I go get something that weakens me, but if feelings are coming up that they don't want to deal with, there's actually a very good video out there. I found it on Amazon and watched it. And there's a restaurant in California called Cafe Gratitude. And Cafe Gratitude, they got great food, but when you go in, there's a question of the day, and they ask you this question and invite you to respond. And then when you sit down to eat, they've got, their recipes, their menus they've got really good food, and their recipes are things like, let's say a sprout salad might be, I'm wonderful. They have all kinds of fun names for their foods. And this one day there was a gentleman from New York, an Italian, old town Italian guy who was about 100 pounds overweight. And the question of the day was, what do you most want in your life? And there were two young men. One was the son of the owner of the restaurant, and the other was another waiter. And they greet this guy and ask him, and he almost goes into tears. And he says, I'd really love to be loved again, but with this body, and he's about 100 pounds overweight, who will ever love me? Well, these two young men went to Dad, who's in the back kitchen cooking, and say, we really like this guy, and we'd like to take him on as a healing project. And they end up creating a documentary of working with this guy. And one of the scenes they show, they sign a contract with him. The guy agrees he will eat nothing but what they feed him. So one of the things they do is they go to his apartment and they clean all the junk out of it. They will show you going through all the drugs he's got in his refrigerator and freezer. Like 90% of what's in his refrigerator and freezer and his cabinets has to go because it's all drugs. It's all pure so-called food that weakens the structure. And later in the film, one of the challenges in his life is when he was a young man, he had a woman in his life, and they fell in love and had a wonderful time together, and then broke up. And he has a daughter he's estranged from, and he wants to get back into connection with them. So one of the things these young men do, they walk him through a tremendous amount of healing work. Really intense. You get a really good view of what the process looks like. And they bring his wife and his daughter, and they're sitting in the apartment interviewing them. And, it's all nice, and, they haven't seen each other in years, and it's all nice and wonderful until they get into one of the issues where they've each got goals, and he ends up just raging at her, and he jumps up off the couch, and they're videoing him. He jumps up off the couch and goes into the kitchen and opens the refrigerator. Well, he opens the refrigerator, but instantly remembers he doesn't have any drugs in there. He just closes it again, because most of the food he ate was to shut down his vitality so he didn't have to feel. And this rage comes up, and the first thing he does is heads for the fridge, because that's where he keeps his supply of drugs. The culture calls it food. By the way, let's imagine we've got a fertilized ovum. We'd have to put that fertilized ovum, or have that fertilized ovum, in a live body in order to develop a human living child, right? In order to actually grow food, you have to have life in the soil. In fact, you have to have soil. Most of agribusiness is based on the fact that our cultures like to drug themselves. And the so-called food that they sell is not grown on soil, but it's grown on dirt. Dirt is dead. There is no life in dirt. You can't get life out of something where there's no life. If you've got a field and you pour 10 gallons of glyphosate on it to make sure everything in the soil is dead before you plant a seed in it, then you get to sell the farmer chemicals with which to make that thing grow into what looks like food, but it's not food. Ultimately, you have to actually eat food to be vital. You have to do things that vitalize and strengthen this structure. And that's all part of the process of healing. So to move into the space of responsibility and to recognize if you're fully vital, there's nothing you can hide from yourself. And this work is about being 100% vital. So to heal, we've got to be willing to step into a level of vitality that perhaps hasn't been seen in our bloodline for years. And we're going to have to be willing to look at everything that's in us. Every signal we get that is a signal of pain is calling to us. It's asking our ears to grow and to hear there's something going inside of us. Again, if it's not inside of you, you can't feel it. And if it's inside of you and it's painful, it's calling you to look. It's calling you to stop drugging yourself. It's calling you to vitalize yourself and to, when you come to full vitality, look at everything that's in you. And that means that ultimately, you also open up your genetic structure and you start to look at the anomalies that have been stored there from who knows how many generations. And you work through those things as you wake up and become more vital and more alive. So the purpose of pain is pretty awesome. If you remember that in the middle of your model, each time you're in pain, you will benefit and you will grow from it. And that's the essence of chapter 5. And why is this happening to me again? Back to you, young lady.
I'm just going to share, because I really resonate with that, because I know some of you know that when I had a massive brain injury, I spent 9 weeks in a coma, and I would not behave that way medically, but there was a stage where the pain was really bad, but I knew that I needed them to stop giving me medication completely, that I needed to feel the pain so I could address what was going on inside of me. So as soon as I was able to speak, I told them that to not give me any drugs at all, so I could just experience what I was experiencing. And that's where I got all my answers from. That pain actually gave me the answer that got me walking, talking, and physically being able to do what I do today, because I was told I would probably never walk again. And I was unable to speak. I was completely blind, but the answer was actually in the pain. So it definitely resonate with when you were speaking then of pain, of, you know, the medication. Yes, it's needed to a, you know, certain degree, but I think there is that, you know, moment where you do need to go to a place where you do go through it without medication, because the medication was just suppressing the pain for me, and I needed to experience the pain so I could address it.
Yeah, and I suspect, Yinka, that one of the reasons you recognized this book when you picked it up and locked onto it was because you'd already been doing the work. When you went through that, you had an intuitive knowing as to what you needed to do, and now you're teaching your mind about it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome.
Yeah, because it helped me understand what I did, because when I did it, I just did it. Like, it was just automatic, like subconsciously. But now this understanding these teachings is like recognizing, oh, that's what I did.
You go back to Yeshua 2,000 years ago, and his teaching is about physics and physiology, psychology and genetics. It's not about theology. And at one point he's talking about the mind, and he says, in order to comprehend what I'm telling you, you've got to have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Going through that experience, you built the brain cells. That would be what the eyes to see and hear meant. You know, I think we can reasonably assume that most everybody in his audience had what we call functional eyes and ears. He wasn't talking about that. He was saying that in order to comprehend, you know, in order for me to look at an object and be able to categorize it and know what it is objectively, I have to have the brain cells for it, and my mind has to be able to build a construct for it. Without any brain cells, I look at it and I go, I don't know what that is. I don't have any idea. You know, there's an interesting story about the explorers back in, you know, the early discovery of the Americas, and they're going down the coast of South America, and they anchor their tall ship out on the water, and they go into the shore in their rowboats, and they end up communicating with the natives. And the natives, when they finally get to where they can understand each other, the natives are kind of like, where did you come from? What, how did you get here? And they're standing there looking at their tall ship out in the ocean, and they go, the tall ship right there. And they look, and they can't see it. They have no brain cells. So the ship that's physically standing there in front of them, their brains can't replicate, can't build a reality to match that. So they can't see it. You know that song, wherefore once I was blind, now I see. Mm-hmm. And so building the brain cells, and then you look at something, you have an experience, you're building the brain cells down, you go back to what you did then that you didn't have the brain cells for, but you had the intuitive knowing, which says you've probably been at this for a long time, a lot longer than this lifetime. But now you're building the brain cells to be able to look back and went, oh, okay, that was it. Oh, now I see it. Now my brain can replicate it. It's not just an experience I have in my being, but my brain can bring it to earth and I can talk about it. That's the idea of building the brain cells. And that's what the bulk of this work is about, is building the brain cells.
Yeah, that's what it's really helping me do, to be able to put the words to the experience, because I didn't share it because I didn't know how to express it. And now I'm getting the words to express the experience. Mm-hmm.
Nice. Awesome.
And Corey's asked, how could you endure that pain, Yinka? And it's like, for me, that was the only direction to go. I could keep suppressing it with medication, and probably would have been on it for the rest of my life, because that level of pain, I'd given birth 3 times before without pain relief. So I thought I knew pain, but that pain from a brain injury was beyond any words. But I knew that I could take painkillers for the rest of my life, or I could go through that motion of going through it. And it was actually there was a stage where I actually asked the pain what it wanted. Mm-hmm. And it literally gave me the answer to wiggle my toes, and that's literally what got me walking. And even to this day I still do that. I just literally, when I get lost in a moment, I just wiggle my toes. And it was like any moment I was conscious in hospital, I would wiggle my toes. I wouldn't say, give me some painkillers. I would use the answer that the pain gave me.
Right. Yeah. And, everything in life is here to teach us. And the master teacher of life is inside of each and every one of us. Men and women will try to lead you out there they're the guru. No, G-U-R-U, guru. G-U-R-U, the teacher is inside of you, literally. And the objective of this work is to move the garbage out of the way so that you can go to that teacher, and anything you need to know about life, you'll be taught directly from within you.
Okay. So I shall go through the slides.
Okay.
So this is for yourselves to have a write down. The purpose of pain. 1 second, sorry, I can't see in this screen. The purpose of pain is to make our ears grow. If we refuse to listen by suppressing the warning, it will grow in intensity. Pain will not be ignored. What pain are you hiding or suppressing from yourself? So just noticing and recognizing, is the pain within you that you are either trying to suppress or hide? And then to breathe. Just to hold that space, to recognize it and to breathe.
That breath is such a huge key. Mm-hmm. The breath is the teacher. So should we move on to chapter 6?
Yeah,
What is reality? And we're putting building blocks in place so that ultimately when we get to the forgiveness process, it'll make sense.
Mm-hmm. So pain is just a bell warning us that we need to look at something. Shutting down the alarm without dealing with the fire that's burning will lead to total destruction. And this is just the poem at the end. From an anonymous poem. Each moment of love, each moment of giving, each moment of joy, each moment of living, each moment of anger, each moment of lying, each moment of fear is a moment of dying. All our moments add together like the digits in a sum, and the answer tells us plainly whether life or death will come.
And it's all up to us. What are you going to do with each moment that you have? And so the next chapter is chapter 6.
Yeah. So chapter 6, what is reality? It takes courage to face yourself and be vulnerable enough to feel your true feelings and honest enough to look at your real thoughts. So denial, acknowledging unaware of denial could distort realities in the mind so completely. What do you believe about yourself to create what is happening in your life today? What do you
Good question.
about yourself to create what is happening in your life today?
And are you willing to address that and change it at the unconscious level? So when we ask the question, what is reality? Everybody goes, well, that's what's happening out there, isn't it? No. There's some interesting Harvard research that tells us that, and this is the most quoted research in psychological history. This research was done back in the late 50s. And what they did is they hooked people up to electrodes, measured brain cell firings. And what they determined was that in a time frame where there were 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity happening in the brain, 10,000 brain cells firing, the max amount of data that went into the perceptual construct in that time frame, which was about a 25th of a second, the max amount of data was 9 bits. So there are 10,000 brain cells firing and 9 bits. 9 of those firings get into conscious awareness. Now, if you look, you'll see statistics that might say 12 or 14. The point being, not looking to be literal 9 compared to 10,000, but what goes into conscious awareness is just a tiny bit of what's going on in the unconscious. And recognize at this stage that there's something that determines which 9 bits in any given event your mind uses to build your reality. So reality we're going to define as the output of the mind. What's happening in the world is actuality. What's going on in the mind is reality. Now, this is something that I had developed over a period of years, the understanding of this, but it's kind of an example of needing the brain cells. I used to keynote at a conference called Global Science. It was a conference that happened out in Denver, Colorado every year, several years. This goes back 30 some years ago. And there was a gentleman there, a PhD scientist there named Bob Beck, who was doing a presentation. And he's up there doing this presentation and he talks about, and it was like, bingo, was just like one of the keys to understanding this whole body of work. And what he spoke about was reality and actuality. Thank you, Bob Beck. He's no longer in his body. Actually, when I was thinking about that today, I looked him up and went back and communicated with some folks that he was connected with. He was just an amazing, sweet guy. But I remember watching his presentation, and it was like so impactful when he used just those 2 words, reality, actuality, realizing that the output of the mind is our reality, and then there's an actuality. So you look at this Harvard research, 10,000 measurable units of electrical activity happening in the unconscious, which is the body. 9 bits go into conscious awareness. It's been estimated in that time frame, and that time frame was about 1/25th of a second. It's been estimated that in that time frame, there are approximately, or there perhaps are as many as 20 trillion bits of data in the actual world. I mean, start thinking about we live on one planet of, 8 in the solar system with the sun that's how many thousands of times bigger than the Earth, in a galaxy that's how many tens of trillions of times bigger than our Earth. And this is one galaxy of how many trillions of galaxies. 9 bits of data is the window we're looking through at perhaps a 20 trillion bit world. And we've got the ego status to think we actually know what's going on out there. When you start to label it properly, you realize you've got a reality, I've got a reality. If you've ever been in a courtroom where 6 different people testified about an accident, you wonder if any 2 of them were at the same accident. How come their descriptions aren't the same? They were all at the same accident, weren't they? Well, they were all at the same actuality, but at any given moment, every mind serves up a reality based on the goals it holds, the content of the mind, and the event that happens. So there are those 3 things involved. The goal is what tells the mind which data out of 10,000 brain cells firing it's going to use to produce this particular moment's reality. So at every event where you think that person should have the same reality as you, in order to have the same reality as you, they'd have to have the same history as you. And no 2 of us have got the same history. And as long as we live in a world, we insist that everybody else's reality has got to be the same as ours. Oh man, that's hell. The control trip that comes out of that, the work it takes to do that one. Oh man, nobody can carry that much stress. It's like super destructive. So when you start to understand there's a big difference between reality and actuality, and literally every other person in the world in any given circumstance is going to have a different reality than you. So at every moment, each reality served up by the mind is unique to the individual. And often, so often, the reality that's going on in somebody's mind has absolutely nothing to do with the actuality that happened. Let's see if that's true. Has anybody here ever had somebody who's told you about something you did that was so terrible, and something you said that was so awful? And when they tell you that, you look at them and you go, but that never happened. Anybody ever had that experience? Everybody has. Now, notice, think back to a time when that happened. Somebody told you about something you did, and it's like you have no reality structure, no framework for what they're saying you did. It didn't happen. And notice that when people do that, they're always in some form of hostility or fear. Hostility and fear, when it fuels a reality, the output of a mind, tells you that that mind is using corrupt data to build its construct. Hostility and fear are always a marker that the mind is using corrupt data. You don't need to know anything else about what happened. If there's hostility or fear fueling your perceptual construct, your mind is using corrupt data, and it's a lie. Now, you may think that your survival depends on proving that lie is true to somebody else. But you know what? Proving it's true just resonates more of the hostility and fear that is a disease within your tissue structure. It's time for us to stop. It's time for us to be willing to question that. And it's time for us to create the space for other people to be able to have a different reality than us. It doesn't have to be the same as ours. You know, there's that old definition of a genius. Somebody agrees with me, but nobody needs to agree with me for me to know what my reality is, and for me to allow the space for them to have their reality, whatever it happens to be, and recognize that oftentimes the reality output from someone's mind was just triggered into activity by an event, but actually has nothing to do with that event, except that that event resonated that particular reality into existence, or into activity, pardon me. So once again, I had said this earlier, realities output by the mind always tell more about the content of the mind than the world one thinks they're looking at. And if you make room in your mind to recognize that each other person's reality is valid for them, go back in the ancient scriptures, and they said each person is justified in their own wisdom. In essence, they were saying everybody's got a reality and they're justified in that reality. It doesn't make it the truth about what's happening, but they're justified. And when you realize that, then you can start to let go of any space of hostility or fear in you. And instead of a condemning attitude, you can hold a space of love. And when you hold a space of love, the things that are not true in anybody's mind that is going on around you, your own included, those things will begin to dissolve. Those things will begin to release. So your life is going to be more peaceful when you make room for the recognition that everybody's got a different reality. Oh, I'm sure this is what happened. And Bill says, no, it was this. It's like, that's an interesting reality. And I recognize that every moment, everybody's got one. So, okay, that's your reality. Now, you think your reality is about me? That's not necessarily true. Or maybe I think my reality is about you, and that's not necessarily true either for me. But I always know that if a reality is being served up by my mind, it's true about me. It belongs to me. And if I don't like it, I can remove it. So this understanding that everybody's got an output and they're different, it creates a space for a whole lot of compassion when we wake up to who we are. And unfortunately, many people are locked into the power person dynamic of, if your reality is different from mine, you have to be wrong. And that's a result of having a power person who raised you in a world where if you didn't agree with them 100%, then you were wrong, you were made bad, you were punished, whatever happened there. That's another topic on codependence. So recognizing this truth, one's empowered to reach into deeper and deeper parts of their own reality structures of their own minds and bring correction to the parts of the mind that need correction. And they're usually the parts that are linked to pain. And most people don't want to face pain. Most people live in a world where, no, I don't want to deal with this. But they don't realize how destructive it is not to deal with it. So one of the other things to do is to really watch your words. You'll see in this chapter when you read it in the book, Richard has described some of the experience he's had, and I feed back to him based on his words what some of his core issues are. Read that and build the brain cells for, so when I spontaneously speak certain words, if I'm observing, remember I said be the thinker apart from the thought, feeler apart from the feelings, the actor apart from the actions. If I'm observing what's happening, if I'm the observer, then I can access deeper and deeper parts of my own mind. And my words will give me clues to the underlying dynamics of my own mind. Probably one of the biggest frauds in the world that people engage in is they believe that somebody else is responsible for the realities in their mind. And that's always a result of projection. And the way projection works is, first of all, somebody has to move into and live in denial. And we have a specific definition of denial in this work. Whenever I think or speak as though something outside of me is the cause of what's moving inside of me, I'm in denial. That something out there can trigger what's moving in me, but what's moving in me is moving in me. But when I say, no, you made me, and then I use a word that describes what's moving in me, I'm in denial. When I do that, your words give your mind instructions on how to structure its reality. So when I'm in denial, you made me, the truth is there's something moving in me that made me, but I have to hide that from myself in order to believe that somebody or something else is the cause. And so what happens when I say you made me, or I just have the thought, is I create a state of dissociation in myself. That which is truly the cause of what I'm feeling and what's moving in me, I have to hide from myself. And I not only hide it, but it's kind of like, you're on your computer and you create a file, you put a password on the file, and you close the file and you throw away the password. That file is never going to be yours to open again. People who live in denial have to hide away the real cause of what's moving in them. And the real cause in those situations are usually the things that are behind their pain. And so now we've created purpose, or I should say unconsciously created an unconscious mind. We're creating a part of ourselves that we hide from ourselves. And that part kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. And everybody that comes along and sees it gives it a whack on the head. Because there's a law of resonance that draws people to those things that we've hidden from ourselves. And the purpose of life, as I said earlier, is to kick us in the limitation, to show us what we're holding on to. And that means the purpose of life is to give us the opportunity to own it and heal it rather than deny it. So once I say, you made me, I'm telling my mind that it has to build a picture world that shows me that you're causing this in me. And that means the real cause I have to dissociate from. When I dissociate from it, I put a lot of energy into it. And when I put energy into, I press out energetically into the world. Reality versus actuality. Thank you, Bob Beck. When I push it out into the world, someone's going to show up through resonance. Somebody's going to be pulled into my space to do it to me again. And when they're pulled into my space, and they do it to me again, what's going to tend to happen is I'm going to use this unconscious data that I've hidden away from myself to build my brain's image of them. So now the pain part of my mind is projected into my brain's image of them. And literally, I construct a picture world where they, or the picture of a body that I think is they, show up in my mind. And it's literally built out of that dissociated data in me. So they show up in my mind with my problem attached. And I think, well, I see it. It must be theirs. And that's all an hallucination. Forgiveness is about collapsing your hallucinations, bringing forward, the password on those files that most of us have, had stored in away in our minds over generations. The password is always forgiveness. And remember, again, when I say forgiveness, I don't mean letting them off the hook. I mean collapsing the perceptual construct of your mind in the moment. As it drops in, it creates a pathway into the hidden part of the mind. And bring the hidden part of the mind forward into conscious awareness. I can then change my mind. As long as I'm in denial, I cannot change my mind. And the pain created by that energetic pattern is literally the stuff that death is made of. So it's time to end this denial, suppression, projection, and step into processing. And in this work, we define processing as the ability to hold love conscious, active, and present when something less surfaces in us, when something less comes up. So to become the actual conscious, active presence of love, to learn to recognize ourselves as that, and whatever goes on in our world, to be able to stand as that space is the objective of this work. And if you don't do that, then what ends up happening is you become what you hate. And then you attract what you fear. If you don't process the hostility and fear in your mind, you will become what you hate and you will attract what you fear. And why is that? Because life wants to heal you. Life's going to send you somebody to kick you in the limitation. If you haven't noticed, you've taken the geographic cure. You went to the other side of the country. And the person that picked you up at the airport finished the sentence of the person that dropped draw start. How did they know what to say to you? Because according to the reality structures active in your mind, even though they are hidden from you, you resonate that very content in them, and they're going to play it out. And so the objective here is to continuously be in the space of looking within, taking your own inventory. The game of the world is, no, I'm going to take Bill. I got Bill's inventory. I know what's wrong with him, and Harry and Mary and Joan and Hortense. I know what's wrong with all of them. Oh no, I'm fine. I'm okay. Everything's okay with me. Well, yeah, I was the one that was. Yeah, I was the one crying in pain. You said, but that was because of Harry. Oh no, that was because of Hortense. Oh no, it doesn't have anything to do with me. It's all their fault. You recognize yourself there? It's time to stop. Notice if you've been through it 87 different times with 42 different people, you are the only one that was there every time. It's about you. And you need to start cracking into your own mind and cleaning up the unconscious garbage. We are not designed to have an unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is an aberration. We're not designed for it. So set your mind. Remember, we talked about sets and the inputs to the mind. Set your mind to perceive through the context of healing opportunities every painful experience that you have. And when you do that, the whole of life becomes an opportunity to heal. And then we're here with these tools to provide you with support for bringing that to really bear on your life and to change not only your reality structure, to face the realities of the generations that have never been dealt with. You go back in those ancient teachings, they said, look to the lives of the fathers, for ours are but a shadow of theirs upon the earth. Most people do nothing but play out the family dynamics, the good old family feeling, and never rise above it, which means they're never actually truly awake nor truly alive. We're looking to support people truly coming into relationship with themselves and others as love, and truly coming into human life. So that's the difference between reality and actuality. I'll turn that back to you, Yinka.
This is the bit in the book about the reality with Richard. When I turned and saw her picking up a cup, I thought, don't touch my coffee. I was quick to attack. I now realize her reality was probably something like, oh, that cup is about to drip. I'd better grab it, Richard concluded. Richard's reality was, people take things from me. For her, it was likely I take care of people. His reaction to the waitress didn't have anything to do with the actuality that happened. Because in the story, the waitress was literally about just to grab hold of his cup to stop it from spilling. And he verbally attacked. He wanted to attack because she's touching something of his. Who was responsible for the realities that come from your mind? What is reality?
And you can see with this example, when you read this chapter of the book, and you listen to his language and how we peg some of the basic dynamics in his life. And then when he does the worksheet in the last chapter of the book, he goes back, it's about his sister, and you see those dynamics. And people are always playing out the dynamics that are most painful for them, because they're the dynamics that most need to be healed. And they're the dynamics that on an energetic level cry the loudest. You know, I talked about global sciences, and back 30 or so years ago, a gentleman named Marcel Vogel, who was a 23-year senior scientist from IBM, showed up at the conference with a camera called a Delaware camera. We talked about this last session. And it's a camera that has a tuning mechanism in it that if you tune it properly and you flip the shutter and there's something in the frequency of that tuned device, then it will take a picture of that rather than light energy coming into the camera. And so our minds are always sending out high energy waves, and most people unconsciously respond to those high energy waves. And until we work through the unconscious dynamics in ourselves, it's, you know, most people are just like a ping pong ball bouncing off one person, another. When you get conscious, instead of bouncing off of all those unconscious energetic patterns flowing around, the unconscious conversations around you, you enter into life consciously and you choose your behaviors rather than play out of old unconscious dynamics. It was a really nice piece of information that Marcel Vogel brought. And Marcel, you know, he's the kind of mind that, you know, if you've got a computer that works, the reason it works is because he worked for IBM and he developed the magnetic coating that stores information on your hard drive. That's Marcel Vogel. He's the one who introduced the camera and showed us the pictures of taking the pictures of the high energy waves that leave the mind when we think a thought. So know that everything that is painful in you, everything that is unresolved in you, one, is a dis-ease process in tissue. It is disturbing the equilibrium of the cell. And two, it's sending out a signal to all the world that says, come and do this to me. And you'll notice somebody always shows up. And as you get conscious, you change the game. And that's what this work's about.
So every conflicting situation offers the same precious opportunity if you are willing to see it in the contact of healing and allow your mind to construct a healing reality.
That's what we're here to support everybody being able to do.
And until
So shall we open the floor for questions?
Yeah. Shall I just read this last one?
Oh, sure, please. Yes.
Until you take charge of your internal reality structures, you are bound to keep re-experiencing whatever you are trying to avoid. And breathe.
Breathe. Yeah, that reminder to breathe is such a big one.
Yeah. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so then if people want to ask.
All right. So if anybody has a question relative to the work we're doing, we're not going to get into individual, well, I have this going on in my life. How do I fix it? You know how to fix it. You've got the tools. We've been doing it for weeks. The information's there. So we're not going to go into those kind of questions, but any questions specifically about where we're at from chapter 1 to chapter 6 and what we've explained so far. Anyone have any thoughts for us? Questions, thoughts, answers, ideas?
Yes, I am Corey. I don't know if that question is really corresponding to the chapters. When there is something in my body before pain, and I want to address it and want to know where it comes from, and I cannot find an answer.
Right.
I don't know. I only can find the feelings I have about that.
Right. Yeah, that's usually what the surface mind is serving up about something that, you know, it's kind of like a thorn. If you get a thorn in your skin and you don't take it out, the body will build a barrier over it. And that's how the unconscious is formed. And so ultimately what you need to do is return your mind to the moment where the original offense, the original event happened. And most people think that's a function of memory. Oh, okay, I have to sit around and think about that deep, dark, dirty thing that happened to me, and then everything will be okay.
Yeah.
No, it's not a function of memory. The forgiveness process, the step-by-step, the worksheet process we presented previously, and the links are there for, the forgiveness, that returning your mind to the moment where the event occurred is a function of forgiveness. And what happens in the forgiveness process, and we talked a little bit about, you know, goals are the thing that take that 10,000 bits of data, reduce it to the 9 bits, it becomes our perceptual construct. If our perceptual construct is pained, then it's a reflection of some sort of pain in tissue. And when I realize that that construct is driven by my goal, in the Aramaic language, the word forgive is shabag, and it literally translates to cancel. So when I cancel the goal, that pained perception collapses in on itself. When it collapses in on itself, you get to drop, if you're ready to handle it, you get to drop right into the original event and start to process it. And it always amazes me. I've been doing this process with people for 40 plus years. And it always amazes me when people do a worksheet and they get to that point of they've identified the specific goal involved, they cancel the goal, what they drop into, their mind just goes right back to the original event. Now, if it's something that's too big for you to handle, then the forgiveness process is a practice. And as you practice using it, you'll get stronger and stronger at it until you're ready to just open those things and move through them. But the returning to the point where it happened, it's not about figuring it out. It's not about memory. It's a function of forgiveness. So I'd suggest digging out that worksheet and starting through that worksheet process, and you'll see some major changes in your life.
Well, that is so great what you say, because I was in that situation that I wanted to find out from the past, and that did not work at all.
No.
So I start now with that dropping the goal.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. That is a big, big help for me.
It's the key. It's really the key to it all. And I look at, what's the situation? Maybe I'm at work and I've got a coworker that yells at me, and what I want from them, and I go into all this trauma and pain. And what I want from them is just to speak to me gently and with care. And most people say, well, so you're telling me that if my goal is for my coworker to speak to me gently and with care, in order to forgive, I should cancel my goal for them to do that? That just doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that? That's a perfectly good goal. And I say, yes, you're right. That is a perfectly good goal. And you don't cancel it because there's anything wrong with the goal. You cancel it because it's the driver that causes your mind in that particular situation to use pain content to build your construct, your perception. Mm-hmm. And the way you collapse that perception, because the goal is the driver, perfectly wonderful goal. When you cancel that goal, that's when that perception collapses and it starts to take you into the underlying hidden part. Mm-hmm. And that's where the healing lies.
Mm. I understand that so well. Great.
Can I ask a question? My question is, how do you, perhaps you personally, or one, recognizes that you've reached the subconscious in the process?
Well, my take would be that that's sort of a trying to figure it out sort of thing. And this work isn't about figuring it out. In fact, in our Codependence to Interdependence Intensive, we point out several of what I call the pseudo solutions of the non-being mind. And the number one pseudo solution is, if I could just figure this out. You can't figure it out. But you can apply forgiveness anytime you want and collapse it. And that's the primary tool to use, is the forgiveness process. And, when you're dealing with something, quite often, as I say, I've been doing this for 40 years with people, and walked hundreds of people through the process. And the minute they sincerely cancel that goal and their perception collapses, and you can just about see people dropping into the unconscious dynamic. And all of a sudden they're talking about something that happened when they were 3, or something that happened when they were 22, or this shadowy memory that something my mother told me, or, they drop into those places. At that point, I'd let go of figuring out, am I in this unconscious yet? No, just be with what's moving in you and follow the worksheet process and detail what you're touching into. And in that practice, you'll go deeper and deeper and deeper into that unconscious state and clean it out until you literally come to a point where the unconscious is eradicated. There is no unconscious left.
Are you referring to the goal on the worksheet when you say, how would I like this situation to end? Is that what you're referring to? That's very interesting, because just as an example, I did something like that with the goal card this week, Yinka.
Okay.
It was quite interesting. I was feeling a bit messy with what I wrote. So then I thought maybe the best thing for me to do is to write, I am so happy and grateful, and just leave it like that.
Great. Awesome.
That takes it to the simplicity of the now.
Yeah.
So maybe that's something similar to what you're talking about.
That's where the power is. That's it exactly.
Okay, thank you then.
That's where the power is.
Thank you.
Francisca.
Oh, that's who just spoke.
Oh, okay. Her name just came up on the screen, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Her hand. Did anybody else have any questions?
I don't have a question, but I can share something.
Please.
So remember, Michael, when you were saying about that Inside Out movie and the Spider-Man?
Yes.
Not long ago, I watched like short interview with Salma Hayek, and she's about this. She gave that example. Example which straight away resonates with me with your work, because she was saying about when you get offended by somebody else, are the the feelings, the anger it's created, it's just because you can understand what they're saying. Because she said, for example, imagine that person's speaks to you in any other language and you don't understand what they're saying, you would not be offended. And
Exactly.
in my opinion, that was the good example. I was having a moment thinking about this, and it was like, yeah, it really is that our perception, that what our mind makes of that words which we hear, because if we don't understand them, it doesn't upset us. So it's
Right.
literally, it's another way of showing basically that the problem is inside of us.
Right on. I didn't realize Selma Hayek was into doing her work, but I'm looking. I just did a quick look on Facebook, and there are a couple of things about own your mistakes and take responsibility. I mean, she could have been at today's workshop. Mm-hmm. And there's another one, the bystander revolution, own your mistakes. So I'll look forward to looking at some of her stuff. That's awesome. But she's right on. That's it exactly.
Seen that on some shorts, and I was like, that really resonates with me, because that's a good example. Because if you don't understand the language, you don't know what people are saying, and the tone of the voice not always means what is said.
Right.
Because people can sometimes be like passive aggressive, or pass something in a kind of covered way.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I'll enjoy looking at what she's doing, some of her stuff. That's cool. Thank you for that input.
Something I met, and it was straight away resonating for me with your work.
Cool. Well, thank you, Magdalene.
Thank you.
And then we've got Joe next. He's raised a hand.
Sorry. Hiya.
Hiya. If
Joan?
anybody else wants to ask questions, well, if you raise your hand, and then I'll call your name next.
Hello, Joan. You got a question for us?
Oh, sorry, is it me you're talking to?
Yeah. Go.
We got you.
Sorry. It's because you said Joan, I wasn't sure whether. Basically, I don't know if I'm going to get this around my head. And it's not like just personal. I'm just talking like in general what we've been talking about. But like, do you know when you say that, I don't know, say my partner's, I don't know, really acting out and angry and he's got his own problems. Me, if that arises up a feeling in me and I'm feeling like, wow, is this me? I know it's not me, it's you. Are you saying that rather than me going back to just sort of forgive what is going on, and that'll bring sort of the truth up about what I'm feeling about the situation? Or am I getting that wrong?
No, that's the idea, is that if you're in a state where there's some sort of pain, especially if you're thinking it's someone else, and you look at the goal that you're holding for that someone else, and you can't, this is the core of forgiveness. You cancel that goal, because the goal is driving perception. When that perception collapses, it'll always show you what's underneath it. And it can go in stages. If you go back again into the ancient Aramaic, where they said to this man, Yeshua, how many times do I need to forgive my brother? Is 7 times enough? And we're told by the Greeks, he said 77 times 70, 7 times 70. In Aramaic, it was actually 77 times 70, which means that you might do a large number of worksheets around your major issues, because you can only process what you have the vitality to process at any moment. And where there are big major issues, there's a lot of toxicity to be dealt with, and you've got to be vital enough. That's what I was talking about with food and those sorts of things, that we do things that keep us strengthened and vital, so that we can move into healing and dealing with those hidden dynamics that, oftentimes have been going on in our bloodline for many, many generations. So being the early adapter that says, I'm going to go in and I'm going to face this, can be a big challenge. It's a big piece of work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Has anyone else got questions?
Well, I'll just invite you, you can listen to our radio show 5 days a week from 1 till 2 o'clock Eastern time. And you can do that by going to our website, whyagain.org, whyagain.org, and just click on the microphone. You can drill down and listen to our radio show on your computer. If you've got access to American phone service with unlimited calling, then the call-in number for our radio show is 563-999-3581. If you call that number from 1 till 2 o'clock, Monday through Friday, You'll be talking to myself and my wife, and we'll be glad to answer any questions we have. There are archives. We've been doing this show now for 11 years, five days a week. And so there are thousands of hours in the archives to go back and listen to. You can go to your app store on your phone and just type in the words Heartland, Heartland, one word, Aramaic forgiveness. And you'll see an icon that comes up with a heart on it. That's the world's only forgiveness app. And you can step into the worksheet processes right there on the app. You can send us questions from the app. There are a lot of our tools that are accessible from the app. Acknowledgements to my wife, Jeannie, for putting that together. And so any way we can support you, we're here to do that.
And I would just like to say that the app as well is really good, because I'm not into using the app, but I've been using it like if I'm on a bus or something, or if I'm out, and it is quick and easy to use, and just it's there. I've always got my phone on me, so it's always there, and I found it quite helpful just having it there on the phone.
And you don't have to waste paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's stood in the queue and you've got a big long queue, it's great to just get it out and just have a go.
Exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Well, anybody else with a question, a thought? All right. Well, if we can be of support, call into the radio show. This and all of the book study clubs that we've done are in archives on our website. You can go to events and you can tap in and just click a link and send it. Of course, you can do that from Hear My Voice Book Club as well. So spread it around, invite people to come and join us, and let's see this grow and happen. And our commitment is, my wife and I have a commitment to make these tools available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. If they've touched you and they support you, there is a place on our website. You can click there's a donate button. If it touches you and you want to support us, basically everything beyond a fairly meager lifestyle for us goes into how do we take these tools to how do we make the tools available on another level to more people? And ultimately, literally, we're working to make it available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. So thank you for joining us. Blessings.
Thank you. And every Thursday in the book club at 5 a.m, we get up and do a worksheet. We go through a worksheet together, where everybody just works on their own worksheet, but we have it on the screen so everybody's going at the same stage. So if anybody want to join the 5 a.m. club on a Thursday to have a go at the worksheets, you're welcome to.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's been brilliant.
You are welcome and deserving. Delighted to be joining with you.
Yeah. And thank you everyone for joining us as well.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Michael.
You're
Thank you,
most
Yinka.
welcome. Most welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael and Yinka.
Thank you. Yinka, how do you stay awake once you've got up at 5 in the morning? I'm barely functioning right now.
I do have, so occasionally, the 10 or 15 minutes nap in the day. I learned that if you don't go over 30-minute nap in the day, because it puts you on a so short nap in the day. It's very helpful.
Oh.
Or there's one thing that's even better than that, and that's a long nap.
I find if I nap too long, I get a bit dysfunctional in the day. So I just go for a short nap.
Well, I fortunately have never had that problem.
Yeah.
Thank you, Michael. An honor and a pleasure and a privilege. Thank you.
Yes,
You're welcome,
thank
young
you
lady.
so
Thank
much,
you.
Michael. Thank you.
Delighted to share with you.
Bye, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Blessings.
See you tomorrow.
Yes, see you tomorrow. Bye.